I'm gonna take you for a little ride today and tell you a little story. On August 11th, 2017, just 5 years ago, my life changed forever.
Getting directions to South Valley Regional Airport.
In August of every year, I typically go out to Sturgis, South Dakota to the motorcycle rally. But that year, things just weren't working out to go. My buddy TJ calls me and he says, "Hey, do you want to fly out there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So me, TJ, his son, and his brother-in-law decide to fly out to Sturgis and enjoy a couple days. The coolest thing about it is that we were taking TJ's personal plane. So I pull up right here. I park my car right there where that gold Honda is, and I'm ready for a couple days of absolute adventure. TJ's got his plane parked right out over here, and he's got all of the suitcases and all the things we're gonna need for the next couple of days. It was super exciting. So then we staged the airplane at the top of the runway, did emergency checklist, and then we took off. So the airport's down here, and we flew this way. We came up here into the air, right about here, got up to about 215 feet. And we lost power. So we had to make a hard right-hand turn on the other side of this building. We came really low on the other side of this building, almost hit this train full of hydrofluoric acids that they make right here at the factory. Follow the train line right here, all the way down this line right here, until we got down all the way at the end. From that direction, right down here, right between the tankers here and between the building, and just flew right down this area here, over the top of this, and then we crashed down right over between those power lines right there. So at this point we're coming this way, and we go right between this power line. You have the top one and the bottom one. They're about 6 feet apart. The airframe of the plane came through there, and the top of our wing hit this power line. We're coming this way, and the plane spun sideways in the air and landed and crashed in what used to be the field right here. So we were out here. We were about 250 to 300 feet away from this power line by the time we stopped. Pieces of the plane, a little tip of the wing, and everything fell down in the parking lot here at the mini storage place. It's kind of crazy and a little bit random to think like my body went between these two lines right here. It's just weird. The whole situation was just bizarre. A week after the accident, I came back here to this mini storage, and I asked Luke, who was the deskman there, if they had a camera system. Sure enough, they did, and it recorded right before and right after the accident. And so there was no actual footage of the event at all. Looks like that's Luke right behind me. All right, here's Luke.
Hi.
He's like, "Yeah, I remember you."
Yeah.
So I came in and chatted with you about it.
Yeah, and they had already dug out the holes to try to get the anchor points for the foundation.
Oh, right, yeah.
And if you had gone 2 weeks later, you'd be
into a building.
Or even just holes even.
Right.
2 weeks later into holes.
Into holes, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
not
Yeah,
have the
the
flat landing.
building wasn't there yet, but yeah. And then do you remember when I came in and talked to you, and you and I were in here, and we were talking about my crash, and that other lady came in?
Yeah.
And she's like, "You were in the plane crash? It just happened right now."
Yeah, and it was one that was up the road.
Yeah.
Like about a mile or two.
Yeah, there was another one that took off from the airport here. It was up the road about a mile or two. And while I'm talking to Luke, the same day, this other plane crashed into power lines and fell into a field next to an industrial area.
Yeah.
And you know what's so crazy about that? I never told you this, but I heard that plane take off from the airport right before it crashed because I was right over here at a client's house. So I actually heard it because it was a twin engine. You know that you can tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So it was a twin engine. I could hear it, and I'm like, oh, that sound, taking out. It's a twin engine. I was right over here in these condos talking to a client, and I'm like, I could hear that. So I'm telling the story to my client as I hear the plane that ended up crashing take off.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's
Isn't
crazy.
that wild? As I'm here talking to him about the accident that happened, a week earlier or 5 days earlier or something?
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't actually see the accident, but coming through the things,
Yeah.
and there were pieces of the airplane on my lawn,
Right.
and the power went off briefly in my office because
it hit.
it sparked.
And then we couldn't there was no footage from the cameras. Remember that? Because it was like, it took the footage right before and right after, but not during because it hit the power line and knocked out your footage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was wild, man. It was wild.
Ugh.
So you still have pictures of it, huh?
It was apparently trying to come back to the airport and lost power. Ended up going through these power lines that are next to me here.
4 people were on board when the plane crashed down right after takeoff. Witnesses say it looked like the pilot never got full power and then ditched into a field, hitting power lines on the way down.
Behind me, and I see the big dirt cloud. This huge plume of dust comes up, and I go, oh my God, he's crashed.
2 people walked away from that crash. 2 others were taken to the hospital in serious condition. No word yet on what caused that plane to go down.
Denver, you just survived a plane crash. What are you gonna do next?
Not flying a little plane.
It was all smiles and giggles at the moment because I feel like I was just in this state of shock. I guess I could have never really understood what the rest of that year held for me till it all kind of came crashing down. So I often wonder what my family and friends and my wife and my kids and what their lives would have been like without me. You think you make an impact on the world or that hopefully you're a contributor in some people's lives. But I'll be candid, when all of this went down, I think I was probably more contributing to myself and my family than to anybody else's lives. And one thing that I learned is that I needed to spread my wings a little bit more, and I needed to share myself and the things that I've learned and try to contribute more to other people's lives so that I can make an even greater impact on this world. When it was all over, I knelt down right here and I prayed to God and I thanked Him for sparing my life. And I promised Him that I would do the best in my capacity to be the best person I could possibly be for the rest of my life. So the next day, I'm coming out of my house and I walk through my driveway and I get shocked and scared of something. And it was just the shadow on the ground, my own shadow. And I was like, what the heck is wrong with me? Why would I be spooked from my own shadow? What is causing this? And then my wife kind of talked to me about it. So then I go into this deep, dark depression, something I've never felt before. I mean, it felt straight clinical. It felt like the worst thing I've ever felt in my mind. It just felt dark and painful and frustrating. I would make love to my wife And then right after, I would lose all like sensation and joy. I would hang out with my kids and play with them and have, daddy time. And after that was over, I would just feel numb and empty and dark. And my wife was like, Jennifer was like, you need to go talk to your doctor. I mean, you need some type of medication. And I'm like, what is this? And she goes, it's PTSD. I'm like, the hell are you talking about? Like, I'm not a soldier. Like, I didn't go to war. Like, how am I supposed to have this? So I talked to my doctor and he goes, yeah, you have it. He's like, you have all the signs, all the things. He said, the thing is with PTSD, you can't control it. It just sometimes happens. So for the next like week after week after week, I would have these like nightmares of the plane crash, and I would replay it over and over and over in my head, and I would try to stop the plane from crashing every night. And it would just, I probably had hundreds of these frickin' nightmares about this plane crash, and I could not stop the plane from crashing. It crashed every time, and there was several different variations of what happened. Those nights I would just wake up shaking and holding my pillow or gripping what was next to me, or I'd wake up Jennifer kicking her like when we hit the ground. And there was just so many aspects of it that were so unexpected. Like, I thought when it was over that I would just kind of get over it and move on. That's not at all what happened. TJ was the pilot, right? And I was directly behind him, and then next to me was his son Nathan, and next to TJ in the co-pilot seat was Denver. And right before we hit the ground, Denver popped the door open so that the door could be open when we hit the ground. And when we hit, all this dust and dirt and debris and everything just came plowing in from the field that we landed in. It just covered us in dirt. And he had the fortitude to actually kick the door open between the time we hit the power line and the time we hit the ground. I mean, which is emergency protocol in a small plane, because if you impact in a small plane with the door closed and the airframe of that plane bends at all, you could be stuck inside in the event of a fire. We had full tank of fuel and 4 people in there. And so really Denver was a huge hero in this aspect of the crash, but also TJ was a huge hero, because as we started to go down, I can remember him just going into this mode of focus. Like when we lost power, and because what happened was we're climbing, we're going through the air, we're getting up there, and TJ goes, look, we're at stall, we're stalling. Like, I don't know why we're stalling. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? He goes, yeah, we're not gonna make it. And I'm like, oh, like we have to go back. And he just turns, and as he turns, the plane just falls right out of the sky. And it was like the weirdest feeling. And I mean, I could share a 45-minute story with you about all the stuff that goes through your head when you're about to die. It's wild. But we ended up, he ended up being able to control the plane, keep it from crashing into the train. And then as it was kind of flying back towards the field, it just kind of like bucked. It was like the weirdest feeling that this plane was just like, burr, 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 And then we hit the power line, and Denver kicks the door open, and then we hit the ground, and all this dirt and dust just shoots inside. And I didn't know if we survived or not. I mean, your adrenaline and your thoughts are moving at such high rate of speed that you don't even know like if you're gonna die. But the unique thing about it is that at that point, I don't feel like I would have felt any pain if I died. And then your mind kind of goes into this state of acceptance for what's about to happen. It's hard to understand unless you've been in a death experience before. A lot of people will say, oh, you had a near-death experience. No, I had a death experience. I just happened to live from it. It was just a little more intense than the motorcycle accident that I got in. That was a near-death experience. This one was a death experience. I had plenty of time as we were falling out of the sky to think about dying. And so it was really just that all of your mind and all of these things you accept I thought about my dad and conversations I didn't get to have with him. I thought about my youngest daughter and how I haven't spoken to her yet because she was so young. She couldn't articulate words yet. She was so little, and I didn't get to have a conversation with her. And that I was supposed to go on a date with Jennifer, a couple days, and just all these things that go through your mind that you are like, no, I need to go do these things. This can't be happening right now. This can't be the end of my life yet. And so it's just such a weird mental and emotional mind F, I know PTSD can come from all different things, but I had never dealt with this shit before. I mean, it was so heavy and it was so daunting. I would be at my computer at work trying to get stuff done, and all of a sudden I would be off in a daze for like 45 minutes, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, whoa, and I'd look at my clock and it was like time to go home, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, where did I go? And I would just replay it over and over again. And could I have done something different? Could I have stopped the plane? Could I have helped in any way other than having good vibes, And it just annihilated me from the inside. And so after a little bit of time, I just couldn't concentrate. So I took this road trip. I drove just by myself for 11 days. I went from Utah all the way up through Idaho, all the way up to the Canadian border, and then I drove my sports car all the way down the coast for 11 days. And stayed in little boutique hotels and stopped at every beach and just hung out and just looked at the scenery, and I just had this reset. And while I was out there, I came back. I came back to who I was. I realized that I was still in there. I wasn't broken. I was just bruised, and I needed to somehow fix it. I didn't really know what to do. And so after the trip, it was really great for quite a while. My mind was straight and I was back on and I was feeling good. And then all of a sudden I just realized, but I'm not producing. I'm losing income. I felt like I had hit kind of a plateau. I told Jennifer, I don't know what else to do. And she comes to me and she goes, listen, she said, I think you need to go to Tony Robbins. And I was like, what? Are you sure? And I had remembered having a conversation with my friend Lindsay after she came back from Tony Robbins, and these massive mark that it left on my soul when she talked about her experience going to Tony Robbins. She said it absolutely changed her life. And I was like, how is that possible? She said, you need to go. And I had always remembered that. So when Jennifer brought it up and she was like, hey, you need to go. And I'm like, babe, we can't rub two pennies together. And so for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, unbeknownst to me, Jennifer went to classified ads and sold everything that she could sell, that she could find around the house. She sold old baby clothes, old toys, all kinds of stuff. And she saved up enough money to pay for my trip. She made saved up $1,500. And it was just enough to send me to New Jersey on a plane, and just enough with our company discount to get a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within ticket. And that sacrifice that she made saved my life. It just saved my soul. And so I'll be forever grateful to her for putting every last dime that we had and the last money that we could rub together and believing in me enough to know that I would recover and that I could come back from that darkness. They say when there's a will, there's a way. She definitely created a way. I didn't have any will. I was done. And she created a way for me to come back to myself and find myself again. At that event, I learned more about myself than I have ever learned in my life. And for those of you who have been to one of Tony's events, you understand. And I realized that we are created for a purpose. that we have something inside each one of us that is meaningful and valuable, even in those moments of darkness, despair, pain, anxiety, fear, your desire to end your life, your desire to end your existence. That if you could see yourself the way that other people see you, or if you could see yourself in 5-10 years from now, if you continue forward, it's worth doing it. It's worth making the effort. Had I known what would happen and transpire in my life over the next 5 years, I would see that value and I would step up. I hope I would have at that time. I would never have imagined that my life would be where it is now, and the joys and happiness. And just remember that it is always darkest right before the dawn. It is worth it, and that you are worth it. You have a message and a purpose to bring to everyone else and to bring to this world, and to make your mark in this existence, and to create your legacy for your family and for your future. And that is the story of my plane crash, kind of my downfall of that time, and before I really had my awakening. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up on Closer Cult, either on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. And I'll talk to you guys later. If you or anyone you know is considering suicide because of PTSD or crisis in your life, please call the new Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by simply picking up your phone and dialing 988. It is worth it, and you are worth it.